What? Yeah, I was talking.
One, two, three, one, two, three, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight.
Suganda,
One,
she
two,
has
three,
been
four,
Delhi
five,
for
seven,
three
eight.
years. Ah,
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to Gender and Politics in Digital Era. It is wonderful to see representatives from political parties, civil society, technology, the private sector, donor organizations, academia, and diplomatic missions gathered in one room. That diversity matters because safer digital spaces cannot be created by any one sector alone. My name is Wendy Chavisa Chen. I'm from Thailand. I'm a clinical sexologist, entrepreneur, and advocate working across technology, inclusion, and social impact. So through the work that I've done, I've seen both the opportunities in digital spaces create and the harm they can enable. It is therefore a real privilege to host and moderate this evening's conversations. So throughout tonight, you will hear us use the term TFGBV, technology facilitated gender-based violence. This can include online harassment, coordinated abuse, threats, disinformation, manipulated images, and other digital harms that disproportionately target women and gender diverse people. Although this attack may begin online, their consequences are very real. They can affect a person's safety, family, reputations, ability to participate in public life, and ultimately who feels able to lead. Tonight's conversations is convened by Colmena Fund in support of the British Embassy Bangkok. We will explore not only what this violence look like, but also what institutions must do differently to prevent it, respond to it, and ensure accountability. To formally open our sessions, it is my pleasure to invite Ms. Sarah Island, Acting Deputy Head of Mission at the British Embassy Bangkok. Sarah, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. And on behalf of the British Embassy Bangkok, I'm delighted to welcome you all here this evening and to thank the Colmena Fund in particular for bringing together such an impressive group of leaders, practitioners, and partners. I'm particularly pleased to be opening this discussion because advancing the rights of women and girls is a core priority for the United Kingdom. We believe that societies and democracies are stronger when women can participate fully, safely, and equally in public life. That is why tackling violence against women and girls, including online violence, remains central to our international engagement. Across Southeast Asia, women are helping to shape public policy, strengthen democratic institutions, and drive social change. Yet women remain underrepresented in political leadership, holding around 22% of parliamentary seats across ASEAN and just under 20% in Thailand. Their participation is not simply a matter of equality, it's essential to stronger democracies and better decision making. As political debate and campaigning increasingly take place online, the opportunities for participation have expanded. Digital platforms have created new ways for women to engage citizens, build movements, and to make their voices heard. But they have also created new risks. Women leaders, candidates, and activists across Asia continue to face online harassment, threats, disinformation, and image-based abuse. These harms can be particularly acute for younger women, women from minority communities, and others who are already underrepresented in political life. What's increasingly clear is that technology-facilitated gender-based violence is not simply an online issue. It has real-world consequences for political participation. When women are discouraged from standing for office, when they withdraw from public debate or limit their participation because of online abuse, we lose voices, perspectives, and leadership that our democracies need. As digital technologies continue to evolve, including the rapid development of AI, these challenges are changing quickly. That makes conversations like this more important than ever. One of the reasons this discussion is so timely is that we're moving beyond understanding the problem and towards identifying solutions. We have a growing body of evidence on how technology facilitated gender-based violence affects women in politics. The question now is what we do about it. And that's why I'm so pleased that we have this group of speakers here with us this evening. Kun Wendy Chen, our moderator, brings a wealth of experience from Thailand's technology and innovation sector and a strong commitment to inclusion and social impact. Hei Yun Yang brings the perspective of a former parliamentarian and human rights advocate. Fezra Rezelman brings experience from both politics and the technology sector. And Geraldine Raymond brings the perspective of a pioneering political leader and former legislator who has been a powerful advocate for inclusion and representation in public life. And Suganda Palma brings expertise at the intersection of gender, technology, and public policy, with experience working across civil society, government, and the private sector. I'm looking forward to hearing all of their insights and learning from their experiences as we explore how to make digital spaces safer and more supportive of political participation and leadership. The UK is proud to support conversations such as this, but we're also here to listen and to learn from the experiences being shared across the region. Ultimately, our goal is a simple one: to ensure that women in all their diversity can participate in political life safely, confidently, and equally, both online and offline. So I hope tonight's discussion not only deepens our understanding of the challenges, but also helps us to build the partnerships and the practical action needed to make that goal a reality, because stronger democracies depend on the full participation of women in all their diversity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for setting the context of clarity and also for reminding us that this issue matters not only for individual safety, but also for equal participation and democracy. Before I introduce our panel, a brief content note. Tonight's discussion may include references to online harassment, threats, and other forms of digital abuse. We invite everyone to engage with care and respect. We are now moving to the panelist introduction. So we are fortunate to be joined by 4 distinguished voices bringing experience from politics, civil society, and the technology sector across the region. So let me first introduce from South Korea is Hae-yeon, a human rights advocate, former member of the National Assembly and founder and president of Mangmonjeong X, whose work centers on political participation and the rights of marginalized communities. Yes. Then moving on from Malaysia, we are joined by Fireside Rizalman, a software engineer, technology entrepreneur, and vice president of Muda, bringing experience from both political, leadership, and technology. Next, from the Philippines, we welcome Geraldine Roman, who served 3 terms in the Philippines House of Representatives and made history as the country's first openly transgender member of Congress. During her time in office, she chaired the House Committee on Women and Gender Equality and championed legislation advancing gender equality, LGBTQIA+ rights, and women's political participation. Last but not least, from India, we are joined by Suganda Prama, co-founder and directors of the Center for Gender and Politics South Asia, with experiences across gender research, public sector, public policy, and the technology sector, he brings an important perspective on women's safety and participation in digital spaces. All right. So, a quick remark that our panelists are sharing from their own experience and expertise this evening and are not speaking on behalf of any employer or institutions. So, our conversation today will move through four areas. So, what TFTBB looks like across Asia, how digital attack become political harm, what should happen in the first 24 hours of an attack, and finally, how we move responsibility away from the individuals and towards institutions. So let's begin with the first questions for all the panelists. The first question is that to ground our conversation in the realities across the regions, I would like to begin with the same questions for each of you. What does technology facilitated gender-based violence look like in your country or area of work, and how is it being used to intimidate, discredit, or silence women and gender diverse political leaders? I would like to begin with Taeyong.
Okay, this is my privilege to speak in front of all of you. And my name is Haeyoung Jang from South Korea, as she introduced me just like. And I started my political journey since 2019, so it's my seventh year to be a politician. And I served as a member of parliament from 2020 to 2024. So the technology facilitated gender-based violence is for me like the air in this room because before becoming a politician, I was working as a documentary filmmaker and YouTube influencer, talking about human rights and especially for the rights of people with disabilities. So, as a YouTube influencer, I also face kind of gender-based violence. But when I declared I go into the political area, the size and the magnitude of the attack was totally different from the past. I assumed the air of the gender-based violence daily basis, but especially when I do some political action that has meaning to our community, political community, it brought another specific attack on me. For example, very specific example, in 2021, we had a huge political scandal in South Korea, which was, uh, it's so sad story. There was sexual harassment committed by the mayor of Seoul, and the victim was the secretary of the mayor. And when she announced a press conference about it, after that, one day after, the mayor committed suicide. Yeah, that was shock. So the funeral was opened, and the whole because he was the member of the ruling party, and he was one of the distinguished candidates of the next presidency. So many visitors were at that funeral, including our prime minister. So can you imagine how the victim would feel about that situation? So I had to show my solidarity by not attending the funeral. And after I announced that I don't attend that funeral, I had to face huge attack. Like I could not imagine I would imagine that kind of attack, including who usually supported my political career. So, so there is, I think, two types of technology-based violence. One is daily basis, and another is when you do something meaningful in your career. Yeah, that's my experience.
Thank you so much. So moving on, I would like to maybe Geraldine. Does this resonate with what you have experienced or observed in Philippines, particularly for gender diverse political leaders?
Most definitely, it does resonate, and I do remember the first time I ran, my rivals would try to use my gender identity and convert it as an issue. to distract from what I was really fighting for. And this is not something unique to genderqueer people, but there's a special gravity when it comes to genderqueer people, considering that, yes, work still remains to be done when it comes to fight for women's rights and protection of women, because there are existing laws which have been amended to include the concept of technology facilitating the gender-based violence, but there are none when it comes to the LGBTQIA plus community. So this was way back in 2016. I remember what type of insults. They were like just fake news. They would say that I would sleep with different students every night, something as, or they would even insult me. They would refer to me as a castrated chicken, or I don't know, insults left and right. They would just judge me outright, even delving into my my faith by proclaiming that God does not welcome people, and that I would be damned to hell. But I would always answer, well, if I'm going to hell, you go first. So that is kind of difficult because I've spent most of my adult years in Europe, and gender identity was never a problem for me. And I come from a political family, and everybody knows my life story. And on a daily basis, I would engage with our constituents in our very rural district, and I did not encounter similar behavior or conduct. But how politicians are, they can be very, how should I describe, strategic about using what is available to destroy their enemy. But there is a particular gravity when it comes to women, because while men are criticized for their point of view or their performance, or the lack thereof, women are insulted, slut-shamed, their moral integrity is being questioned in public, and the results can be devastating because we are not solitary individuals operating in society. We have mothers. My mom was particularly affected. You have children, you have partners, and that is when you start to feel the harm. Because as politicians, we're really tired. Even trying to convince ourselves. At the time, I was trying to convince myself, oh, this is normal. This is part of politics. You just have to be tough and be resilient. But I've come to realize that telling, this is not valid. This should never be normalized. And in fact, as a lawmaker, we could do something to change the situation.
Thank you so much. So now moving on to Fireside. Building on what we have just heard, how can attacks like this grow from individual posts into something more organized or coordinated?
Thank you. Okay, so this is what I often say to my friends, that while politics has become digital, but democratic institutions are still very much analog. So, for example, if you look at 20 years ago, right, political influence can be from televisions, from newspapers, but today it is social media, right? Voters can form their first impression of a political leader based on what they see on screen, right? But we also understand as political leaders that criticism is normal. Okay, it's part of democracy, right? Just this morning, one of my fellow Malaysian and also fellow party member told the room that because Pfizer is part of leadership, so if the leadership messed up, so we are accountable of that, whatever decisions that we make, which is that is how it should be. It's fair, right? But it stops being normal when it's no longer about a few harmful posts, but it's becoming coordinated attacks, right? So coordinated attacks means suddenly multiple accounts appear and send the same messages across different platforms. and communities start talking about reinforcing one another, and making it so that the narrative looks and feels larger than what it should be, right? So um, whether or not the accounts are genuine or even if it's automated bots, the results is just the same. It feels like whatever it is that it's trying to do, it's actually to reduce your credibility, right? And so I think we have to look at technology that it didn't create prejudice. Prejudice exists many centuries ago. But what technology has done is to actually industrialize it. Okay, so it has made with especially with AI, it makes it easier for people to produce abuse, to makes it easier to scale, to makes it easier to distribute. Right. So I think our response should not be limited to asking the women to be resilient. And I'm also guilty of this. I've I've taken approach when I also experience this kind of attacks to just not read the comments or stay off social media for a while. But that's not how we should do about it, right? So I think we have to start talking about how institutions, not just the political parties, not just the governments, but everyone, to become better at protecting democracy participation today.
Thank you so much. So we have heard from three of them already. So I would like to ask Manya, bring together your works on gender and politics and your experience in technology. What do digital safety systems tend to recognize, and what form of gender or coordinated abuse might they still miss?
Thank you. I also want to say thank you to all of you for coming here, and it's an honor to be in a panel and share the panel with experts who have so much insights on the topic. Coming to the topic and your question, I think something that I've observed, and it only makes it much more validated here because it was said here as well, that the tools and technology changes rapidly and the vectors changes, but the patterns of violence remains the same. Um, Patterns being doxing, sexual harassment online, harassment and bullying, um, rape threats, death threats. Like these are things that existed offline, moved to online, became bigger with technological advancements. Um, Also, I think in terms of um, your second part of the question of what may get missed. Um, so while there are known issues and known problems that we gather knowledge on, and tech companies might get to know either through legislation or case, or a human rights activist group that calls it out, attackers and abusers every day train themselves to become quickly kind of known to the policies and the ways defense work. So what they are doing is also that they're rapidly changing their ways. They're literally trying to set base into training the other attackers and how to evade these policies. And the speed at which that they move is something that companies of broader ecosystem, especially the ones that are meant to protect users, women, might not be moving at that speed. And that's where I see a gap.
Thank you so much. So now we have established that these attacks are not random noises. We can see the patterns, and it's everywhere from online to offline, offline to online, and evolve very quickly throughout the technology evolvement as well. So now we are moving on to the second part, where how digital attacks become political harms. So let's now have a look at how digital harm change who can speak, who can participate, and remain visible in political lives. So starting off with Young. So during your time in politics, how did online attack affect the abilities of women and marginalized leaders to speak, participate, and remain visible? Were there any moments when the cause of being visible influenced political decisions or behavior?
Oh yeah. So basically, it is very simple: the stimulus and the reaction. So whenever I try to post on something on Facebook or Twitter, never X or Instagram, about something related to gender equality or rights of social minority groups, then I feel kind of the traumatic emotion. Oh, I will be attacked again. So I need to prepare myself. So that's just the reflection, the reflect. It's not intentional reaction. It's just a reflect because I experience again and again. So that is the basic. So it is so painful to you anticipate you will suffer from the same kind of attack. Okay. So that if you experience this again and again, then someday you will scale the issue on your scale, like on this side, the issue, and the other side, your political future. So it's like if you reduce your voice to those kind of issues, then it looks like you will be relieved, or you will be safer in political sphere. So you get those kind of hesitation in front of the issue. So that affects to the women in politics. So it causes very simple tendency of being silent on social justice issues, including gender equality. So the making silence and more wider view, it changes the attitude of the parties. Because if your party contains a member like me, it makes your party conservative, not progressive. Because they know your party will suffer from similar kind of attack. So it spreads. So your party members get more and more conservative to those kind of issues. So I was always heard, oh please don't speak about that because everyone in this room knows you are feminists. So it affects not only to the individuals, but it also affects to the party, the mechanism. I would like to say that.
Can you follow-up questions from your point? Like, how do you manage that type of behavior or your self-doubt and also your perspective on working towards your goals?
So it's like you dealing with a fire. So when you see the fire in this room, what do? Call 911. In South Korea, it's 119. So I think it's supposed to be given by our party, but because our party doesn't give it to us, so I prepared my personal like the emergency call in my personal safety areas. It might be your mother, or it might be your best friend, or it might be your secretary or your partner. But anytime I feel those kind of feelings or those kind of threats, I connect myself to that people to discuss this problem and to confront this is not my individual problem. This is kind of constructive problem I suffer. So yeah, to find a solution, not individually, but more organizationally or more socially. Yeah, that's how I deal with these problems.
Thank you so much. So like support system is something very important.
Yes.
Yes. Now moving on to Geraldine. So drawing from both your experiences, so I would like to know like how is this your experience and yours perspective on sorry, it's gone. Oh, okay. And your observations of political lives. So how are gender identities and personal life weaponized online to undermine political credibility?
Well, you know, this type of conduct only becomes effective when there is a general perception that society is by and large conservative or unaccepting of gender diverse people or of women who are outspoken, who have progressive ideas. So they want to take advantage of the kind of situation. And basically, our objective is to change that kind of mentality. But it's a vicious cycle when we want to speak out, the opponents of equality, the opponents of women's rights and LGBT rights will want to use social media and will try to discredit us. And of course, it takes, as I said, uh, it's exacerbated by the fact that well, double standards being applied here against women and does not affect men, you see. So what should we do? What you were saying, Heyang, about your political party not being supportive, uh, you know what? How do we convince our political parties to be equally as supportive? And we cannot rely on the goodwill of political parties. What we have to establish as policymakers is a legal framework that will actually, number one, define what the enemy is, what gender-based and technologically facilitated gender-based violence is, define the different conducts, establish the protocols, provide the penalties, so that every woman, every queer individual will know what to do just in case he or she or they are victimized. So this has to be in place, particularly in Asia. We have a particular, how should I say, scenario here in Asia. It's not working in our favor. Where do you find the most number of troll farms in the world? Asia, right? And there are several countries within ASEAN itself that, I don't know, I'm under the suspicion that their governments are actually sponsoring tolerant, maybe they're earning some revenue from these troll farms. And this also has to be addressed, not only on the national level, but on a region-wide level, and why not? Even a worldwide level. And these are things that we should bravely face. And I guess, you know what, even the male colleagues in our parliaments are also cognizant of this. Recently we had a committee hearing in the chair in the committee on information technology, and all the stakeholders were there, content creators, representatives from the different social media platforms were there. Were the most noisy ones. They were not the women. They were the men ranting over the criticism that there's being heaped on them by possibly the political rivals. And the women, we were there quiet, but we were consistently, rather than ranting, we were looking for solutions. We were looking beyond just our personal experiences. And call it empathy, call it magnanimity. But I was inspired example of my female colleagues in the House constantly and proactively looking for solutions rather than just ranting. So this is how I view the solution.
Thank you so much. So Farsra, you work across both politics and technology. So what causes an attack to grow from a few harmful posts into a coordinated political campaign?
Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Oh, sure. What causes an attack to grow from a few harmful posts into a coordinated political campaign?
I think that's very interesting. For example, if let's say I want to become candidate, right? And other political parties probably they also want to put forward their candidates in the same constituency that I want to contest. So the context is very small in terms of elections. So if they found out about my candidacy, right, before even the official nomination day, what can start from just a few harmful posts and become coordinated attacks simply because, to me personally, I think because they are afraid of what my candidacy can mean to them. I give you one example. Just not even 1 month ago, we just had our Johor state election in one of the states in Malaysia, where we had one incumbent seat in Johor. And the moment that we announced that the candidate is not the incumbent, but the incumbent's chief of staff, a good friend of many people, that people start attacking her non-stop. Where are these people coming from? Just a day ago, you didn't know about the existence of this person, but suddenly after we announced her candidacy, then attacks are coming left, right, and front and back, right? So I can only think about this in the perspective of they don't want to contest fairly in this specific context. Other than that, I think for incumbents or even for existing member of parliaments, again, I want to share about the sole member of parliament from our party. We are the opposition in Malaysia. My party is the opposition, and we don't receive the allocation from the government. So what we do, I mean specifically what our member of parliament do, he does crowdfunding. He runs from his constituency in Johor, like about 3 hours from the capital city, to the parliament. He sells his books. He does a lot of things. He even, because this is advantage for him, because he is quite good looking, so he managed to do a bit of modeling. So that yeah. Oh, what's his name? His name is Said Sadiq. Said Sadiq Muda. So, yeah, he does a bit of modeling as well. So because the moment that we become the opposition and we don't receive any allocations, a lot of people thought, okay, so Muda is going to die tomorrow. Said Sadiq is going to jump party to the other side so that he can continue receiving allocation. But he does nothing of that. He continues serving his constituency, doing everything he can to make sure that his people in Johor receive the same treatment, receive aids, scholarships, and things like that. And people don't like that. They want to make sure that his political career dies, right? So what they do, because they cannot attack him, he doesn't receive allocation. So what else can people do? I mean, the other people who don't like you, they just, oh yeah, Geraldine just Googled him. They just attack him online non-stop, to the point where not only him, but his family also become the targets. His fiancé become the targets, and things like that. It's non-stop. So I think, for me, in this context, it's just people are not playing fair. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So moving on to Sugandra, despite the reporting tools and safety policy that already exists across the technology sector, but many women's leaders still report feeling unprotected, particularly during coordinated or cross-platform attacks. So from your experience, where do you see the most significant gaps?
I want to refer back to the comment that I made in the beginning where I said the patterns are the same, and I want to add, just listen to the panel and also listen to your question, that even the purpose is the same, which is to silence women who speak up, to threaten and intimidate them. That's something that has existed for, unfortunately, a very long time, and now it just gets facilitated by technology. I also want to, I think, say and call out again that the speed at which adversaries work is not adequately caught up by tech industry. There's definitely a need to move at that speed, to invest in building a defense system that moves with that speed. I think on top of that, there's also I think I could go on and speak about a very commonly used or often talked about issue, which is education and digital literacy, and having enough resources. Um, but I don't want to delve too much into that because I think a lot of that exists online. I'd be happy to share after this session as well. Long list of things like this. But I want to also focus on the ecosystem that it takes. It's somebody wants to harm, somebody pays for that harm, somebody takes that money for that harm, somebody chooses not to speak up, somebody reports it or probably doesn't report it, and then someone after reporting also chooses to do nothing about it, or somebody does something about it. There are legislations that come in, but in some countries legislations don't come in. So it basically is a whole ecosystem that enables or disables or disrupts the system, and it will only take the whole ecosystem to make this kind of disruption. When we talk about coordination and the speed at which things move, if they're globally, we are 8 billion people, right? With AI, we're 18 billion maybe, right? Um, tackling at that speed requires multiple actors to work in. Another thing is like business is quite strong in kind of looking at their fellow industry leaders or companies as competition and not partners. But this is a space where partnership is needed and cross-company partnership to tackle issues like this, to share threat indicators and say, hey, this is what we saw in our platform. Perhaps you might also see a similar behavior coming in. Sharing that knowledge across is also something that becomes critical.
May I just quickly add, just a nuance to what you were saying, the extent of the problem. We say that we all agree it's systematic, it's well organized, and may I add, it is also well funded. We have progressive ideas amongst us, but I don't know, can you feel it? That across all countries in the world, there is a growing tendency, there is a growing movement by the conservatives, call them far right, extreme right, that actually exploits social media in order to invalidate our message and to silence us with our progressive agenda. And it is a problem, I think, because in these countries where they exercise a lot of influence, well, they do not have anti-fake news laws in place. They do not have technology facilitated gender-based violence laws in place. But here in Asia, I think we should be leading the pack. Well, we also have the example of Europe. They have similar legislation. But I think here in Asia, where most of the troll farms are located, and where we could most benefit with our progressive agenda, well, we should be the first ones to push for the legislative framework that will give support to all stakeholders and all the victims in the fight against technology facilitated gender-based violence and fake news in general. So I think really the time is now. We should pass laws, being policymakers, because without any legal framework, I mean, what do we do? What can we do?
So now let us make this more practical. So I'm gonna give you a scenario and then to see what should we do next. So imagine that tomorrow morning, a woman candidates discover that false stories and manipulated images of her are spreading rapidly across several platforms. Her family has begun receiving threats, and journalists are already calling for comment. So in the first 24 hours, what should each institution do? As we already mentioned, it's an ecosystem, right? So I would like to start with Fireside. What should we do in the first 24 hours?
All right. This is very interesting question, Wendy. I think this question reveals something more important. Um, Many political parties, they spend months preparing for election campaign, but very few actually spend the same amount of time, if at all, to prepare candidates or um, to to prepare the protection for the candidate to before they become the targets of coordinated attacks, right? If politics now happen online, then we should also consider preparing a strategy for these attacks, right? And then the first 24 hours is very critical because silence will actually show people that it can be true, right? But the first thing that a political party should do is it's not very technical, it's actually symbolic. The first thing that a political party should do is to tell the candidate that we are with you, you are not alone in this, and we will do something about it, right? After that, straight away, we just collecting evidence, screenshots, links, accounts, timestamps, because these can become your legal evidence, right? And then after that, straight away, go to the police station and make a police report, okay? And at the same time, make sure that the party and the campaign team can prepare um, a counterattack. First, release a statement that, okay, whatever the news that is spreading is not true, it's false, and these are the truth, and monitor the engagement and then the response back online, right? And then secondly, after all that, make sure all political leaders in the party, senior leaders, to publicly announce their support to these candidates. Because I think my friend last night mentioned about having an inspiration, right? They looked up to senior politicians for whatever reasons. And these are the times that it's very important for the leaders to show that we are not simply selecting candidates because they are women. We select them for a reason, right? And in this crisis, we are in solidarity with them. Okay. And then the last thing that I want to mention is that we should not forget about human dimension. In the scenario that you mentioned, even the family is also attacked. We have to be ready and inform the family that whatever support that they need, psychology or mental health, or even legal support if they need to, is ready for them from the party. And I agree with Geraldine. It's not only the institution for like making a policy and things like that, but it should happen from the political party first.
So I guess this is like beyond crisis management, but it's like a pre-attack management and then a system, a strategy where you have like procedure to follow and then protocol to follow so that you have like a guideline, right? So for Suganda, from a technology and digital safety perspective, what are platforms already doing to respond to situation like this? And where is more action still needed? For example, we already have like report, spam, block, and whatsoever. But then what is still needed in the like platform, technology platform?
Thank you for that question. I brought to you two examples, but I also have some broader perspective to share, which I'll share later. So there's a cross-industry initiative, which is called Tech Coalition's Lantern Program. That's where companies share threat indicators and URLs that are used by abusers who could be investigated much faster across different platforms, and that's where companies are able to share that information. The second one, and this is something that's a non-profit which has managed to bring in many tech companies on board, called stopncii.org. It focuses on the prevention of sharing of private, intimate imagery of women, which is often used as a way to do sexual character assassination and slut shaming that we talked about, use of AI in Udify app, etc., which is also very popular. So if somebody is finds their picture online, they could use Stop NCII to instantly stop the resharing of those imagery. And this is non-consensual intimate imagery. So I'd repeat for everyone to take a note of. It's stopncii.org. Um, this is across platforms. Again, like they're able to match your imagery, match the videos, and block it from being reshared. I also wanted to, I said I had some views that I would like to share as well. Um, if you are in a place like India or even Singapore, you might be able to file a complaint instantly to police and force tech companies to make take an action within a restricted amount of hours. Um, that's legislation. The power of legislation, which has brought in this speed and kind of pressure on the companies to be more accountable, be more responsible, react more faster. Um, there are similar laws which I can call out. I try to list down all. There's Protection from Harassment Act and Online Safety, Relief and Accountability Act in Singapore, the IT Act in India, the recently passed EU AI Code of Practice on Transparency of AI Generated Content, South Korea's AI Basic Act that came out very recently. Um, in the UK, there's a Digital um, Securities Act that has also uh, brought in that legislation to make the tech companies more accountable.
Cybercrime Act.
Pakistan's Cybercrime Act, actually Malaysia, Brazil as well, US as well. Sorry for missing out.
Just want to add very quickly. So in Malaysia today, the Senate just passed Cybercrime Act bill. Yeah. So yes.
Well, in the Philippines, we're still working on the what we call the anti-fake news bill, and also it's still being processed, where we expand a particular law against violence against women and children to reflect technology facilitated gender-based violence, and it's being I think it's garnering a lot of support from from the Congress and also in the Senate. So let's wait that.
So, adding on from your answer, what should government institutions and law enforcement do immediately to document state views, preserve evidence, and ensure that the candidates and her family receive an effective response?
Well, what should governments do? First, establish a legal framework that will define this type of behavior, and then also the protocol. Because as we said, and we all agree that time is of the essence in combating fake news, because you know, in a matter of seconds, it can be shared, and the damage shall be like instant and compounding. So once a legal framework is established, well, strict implementation. But I think for that to be effective, there also has to be legal regulation of social media platforms. Because you know, social media platforms are big businesses. And if you notice, none of them actually are based in any particular country. They have like, what do you call them? In Singapore, for example, Meta has a representative office. But I think it's something strategic. They don't want a physical representation in each country. They don't want to be established as a legal entity in that country so that they will be exempt from the laws. So that is, I think, one thing that all countries should agree on. Because if it's just the Philippines fighting for that, they will just, although we are the third largest in the world in terms of social media users. So an international agreement that would require major tech platforms to establish their presence legally in all the countries or regions so that they can be held liable and accountable for violations. Because without the tech companies, we're just like trying to patch up things and we're just providing remedies without actually preventing and discouraging similar conducts from happening in the future. So this is
Two sentences. I think one bit on what tech companies could do is also to hire diversity and not just, we spoke about representation, I think the whole day and yesterday. We're not just talking about tokenism, but literally be more intentional in hiring people from diverse backgrounds who could bring in a diverse perspective across different departments of a tech company, have feminist thinking in product building, in tech building, and also think, like start thinking from the beginning, understand business from from a DEI perspective. And I know it's been, we live in times where DEI sounds more antithetical to business agendas. It feels like it's a burden. And I think it's time we shift and change that burden and include it into business thinking, especially from corporates and business who are motivated by money.
Can I have a follow-up questions for Geraldine? You have mentioned about like law registration, regulation and protocols and stuff, but then what do you, in your opinions, why these authorities didn't treat this threat as a like something that is social concern, but then take an action with later on when it's already happened?
maybe because some governments have deemed this status quo as something convenient for them. Because behind each government are politicians with vested interests. And if they control social media, they have more chances of staying in power. And this has been experienced in the Philippines. The proliferation of fake news actually um, uh, enjoyed is not the proper term, saw a surge in 2016 with a particular government administration that this was something new in the Philippines, and they effectively manipulated the opinion and the perception of the public, and they knew how to do this, and they mastered algorithms to control the narrative. And then, of course, the opposition, they were affected and then wanted to fight back. But the problem of fighting fake news, and this is a big challenge for all democracies, is this. While those who want to exploit the situation through the use of fake news are unscrupulous, we who want to uphold democratic values have to work with the rule of law in mind. And in fact, the debate now in the Philippines is that they're in a rush to approve an anti-fake news bill. But they tend to want to, from the government, to be the arbiters of the truth. And of course, that is very, very risky. And they want direct control over content creation, which of course is a violation of our fundamental right to freedom of expression. So my alternative when I was still in Congress was that it should be self-regulation from the sector itself, that the sector itself should come up with its own code of ethics and standards, will be policing its own ranks. I called it the Digital Council of the Philippines. And then the Digital Council of the Philippines would also be fact-checking because they have the technical capacity to do that, and they can work with the necessary speed to address the problem or the complaints. And then whatever their findings are would be followed. And by law, we would require the social media platforms to adhere to the findings of the Digital Council of the Philippines. If a piece of information is deemed as fake, the platforms have no choice but to take it down or to bring the disclaimer or whatever. But this, I want to remind everyone, is something risky. It's a difficult balancing act. Protecting our fundamental right to freedom of expression and, regulating the sector against abuses. And also, what amount of government participation when it comes to that regulation can never be direct, because what if the government in power is not exactly very democratic, and they can control it. They can use social media to silence the voices of truth. So this is something we have to bear in mind.
Actually, I would like to add a short sentence. Why the government doesn't deal with this problem in advance is no one is raising that matter as a women political leader, because it proves you are weak. So you are not enough person to be a leader. So that's why so many women are suffering from this same kind of problem, but they are hesitating to say they are victims. So it's not detected as an official problem. I think that's one of the reasons.
And for you, what do you think, what immediate protections and support do the candidates and her family needs practically, legally, and emotionally?
Oh, yeah. Practically, let's assume she's a member of a party. So the party is a key subject to deal with this problem, because party can make her feel it's not an individual problem, but it's organizational attack. But actually, it's even bigger than that. It's attack on her and attack on her party, and it's attack on our own democracy. So the party should define this matter as an attack on democracy, not just her as an individual. And then after that, the party has to give her the opportunity or chance to choose which option we will go through this situation. Because there is many stereotypes of a victim among the political leaders, political women leaders. It's like we feel like we need to fight back. But maybe some of us won't fight back. Maybe some of us wants to be silent. But to be silent is somehow we feel like being coward. But sometimes we can withdraw ourselves to protect ourselves. That can be an option for her too. Of course, fight back would be great. But I think who choose to how to deal with this problem supposed to be her, the victim, not the party in advance. And then, not their families. The tree decide how to deal with this. And the party is supposed to give her options, A, B, C. Okay? You have this kind of options, and if you choose A, we will follow this one, and if you choose C, we will follow, we will support. And that is the most important thing, I think, yes.
All right, thank you. So I guess this scenarios makes one thing very clear, is that the response cannot begin and end with just like telling women to log off and then become more careful or make herself less visible, but then responsibility must sit with the institutions that have the power to prevent escalations and also provide protection and also ensure accountabilities, right? So we have now looked at what institutions should do when attack is already underway. So let's us now move upstream and ask what prevention and accountability should look like before a crisis occurs. So let's begin with Fariswa. So before asking women to run for office, what should every political party already have in place?
All right. I think personally, we should actually move away from encouraging women to enter politics, but instead building a condition where the women will remain in politics, right? Because in many political parties, we celebrate recruiting more women candidates, but recruitment is just the beginning, right? But retention matters the most, matters as much. So if, for example, if a talented woman decided to leave politics just after one election because of sustained online abuse, then we don't actually solve the issue of representation, right? So I think for political parties, maybe I can share what Muda does in every election, before elections. The first thing that we do um, in the Johor state election, it's very recent, so I think I'll be able to share that more. I was being tasked to be part of what we call candidate selection committee. So in Muda, the way you become candidates, you submit an application to become candidates, and then we will call you for an interview. After we shortlist you as candidates, the first thing that we do is actually check your social media. I understand we are not supposed to put the blame on the victims and things like that, but that is, for us, is prevention, right? Because we never know what you've posted in the past. What have you posted in the past, like videos, pictures, or things like that. So we will check their social medias in all platforms that they are active on, and then we'll advise them to actually remove some contents that we think the other parties will, that is risk, and the other people can actually use to attack them with, right? So that is one. During election, I also was part of the team that monitor social media of all the candidates, and we tell all the media officers from all the campaign teams to ensure that the candidates do not reply on that by themselves. It's very easy because during the election campaign, you are easily triggered. Not only the candidates, but any one of us are easily triggered. So for the candidates, at least let the other people control your social media for a while and don't try to post. Even if you want to post, just post something very light and things like that. So in Johor, I had two candidates that are still very eager to respond by themselves. And sorry? At 2 a.m. So it's my job to actually check every morning what they've posted the night before and things like that, and ask them to report, ask them to delete as soon as possible. And there was once or twice during the state election that I even messaged the candidates themselves, because before that I already told the campaign managers to remove the post, and they don't. And then the candidates keep posting. So I messaged them straight away and say, please remove, please refrain, please watch your fingers, please don't try to read anything, blah blah blah, things like that. But I understand, right? But that's one. That's our way to actually try to prevent things from happening in the first place. Yes, prevention. But at the same time, I think we all, like Hayoung shared earlier, that she had like a group of people that you can call straight away, right? And we made sure of that the candidates, the campaign managers, they know who to call straight away if something would happen, like not something would happen, but something would happen and things like that. They know who to call, even 2 a.m. in the morning. And that was me. That was me. Yeah, and of course we make sure that we have the legal support, we have the lawyers standby, and things like that. But the most important thing is, to me, is I actually wrote it down here, that young women are actually watching politics from the outside, right? Because we are talking about representation, and we are talking about women who are easily attacked politically, right? If we don't do this right as political parties, these people might not even be interested forever. And it's going to be a waste for the political parties, right? Yeah. So I think that's the most.
Yeah, like sometimes the inner voice just become loud,
Yeah.
and then you just express yourself. So moving on to Hey Young, as we have talked about the toughness that we needed to prepare and stuff. So how do we prepare young women to enter politics without simply telling them that they need to become tougher?
Mm-mm.
Yes, that's really hard question because we discussed a lot about the problem solving as a whole problem, but as our candidates or our students or our program joiners are just starting their journey to political area. So besides of talking to them to be tough, I do in actually my school for feminist politicians. We do kind of practice, like strategic practice. If in old Chinese saying, in old Korean saying, we know the if we know the enemies, we know how to counteract. So the political, especially in political area, the attacks has its own symptom or characteristics. So we exercise three types of situation. First situation is entrance. When you show yourself on online platforms as a political character, that is the very moment you are facing those kind of attacks. So when you encounter that kind of attack, how would you react? So we simulate the situation and we build our strategy to react. So basically, people tend to build their own team to respond, like just Faizra, right? Faizra mentioned. And then, yeah, when we have our team to counter attack, then we can go through with the entrance. And then we face second attack when we run for an office because we have the counterpart, the opposition candidate. So they are attacking. The supporters of the opposition party is attacking us. So in purpose. So then, if we understand their purpose, then we can counterattack. We can raise our voice or asking them, their parties, to stop those kind of dirty attacks because it harms our democracy and it quite works because they have their female candidates too. So it can be our common kind of political campaign during our campaigns. And then the third moment to facing this kind of attack is when we are doing like kind of reforms about gender equality agendas or social minority groups, right? That moment is really the most tricky moment to react because the attackers are sometimes organized by the counterparties, but it is organic just because of our social norms, because of the social atmosphere of the backlash. So we face such a harsh attack on our candidates or our female figure in our parliament. So at that time of moment, we're supposed to say we couldn't find the right answer to deal with this, and that's why we are all together here and how to deal with this kind of violence. Some might be the legal action would be the best way, and some might be the technical way, and some might be the cultural way, and we need to invent that from now on.
Thank you so much. So Geraldine, drawing from your experience in Congress, so do you have any comments on like what would it take to turn advocacy against TFGBV into enforceable law, political rules, and functioning protection mechanisms?
Well, it takes a lot of bravery and determination, especially among lawmakers. And I guess, lawmakers in my country are realizing that they themselves are already being victimized. And of course, we need louder voices. For the longest time, we do recognize and realize that access to the digital media and digital inclusion are effective tools of empowering women and gender diverse people. But the digital ecospace has to be a safe space. And for that to happen, it's more than just giving, I don't know, free internet connection or knowledge or resources, economic opportunities. It's also giving protection. And I believe that the most effective way of protecting women and gender diverse people and marginalized sectors in general in the digital space is through our laws. As I say, we have to have these laws in place that would not only punish the offenders, but also try to promote a culture of truth, of gender sensitivity, of equity, and also promote democratic values in general. And but of course, as you say, it is good to know and to be familiar with the enemy. And as I said, there is a growing threat worldwide to discredit the voices of progress and the voices of truth, the voices of women and gender diverse people. And this is something that is systematic, organized, and well funded. And this is what we're up against. So time is of the essence. Let's be efficient. Let's be brave. Let's be proactive. Let's be quick.
All right, thank you so much. So now moving on to Suganda, looking across technology sector, what is one product or policy change that could make the greatest practical difference to women's or gender diverse safety?
I'd like to directly answer your question, but I want to quickly wear my nonprofit hat of building Center for Gender and Politics and doing what came out of a frustration over half a decade ago, where I was scrolling through my social media, looking at news of COVID around the world, and I started seeing. I actually started not seeing anything to do with women leadership in Asia, particularly in South Asia, and I started seeing more focus on certain Western regions in Germany, New Zealand. Feminist leadership was being talked about. South Asian feminism, South Asian feminist leadership, South Asian leadership of. There was literally a lot of health ministers all across the region who were handling and tackling the pandemic quite well, were absent. And I think I started from there a narrative, a counter narrative as a nonprofit using the same platforms. It started off as a project called Beyond Victims, where we started capturing stories of women leaders all across South Asia who were doing great leadership work to handle the pandemic. While we were doing that, we also noticed that there's a lot of hateful content and narrative against women on the same platforms that exist. And while we're trying to kind of counter this narrative, there was a need to change that narrative. And I want to also kind of talk about how social media helped me at that point connect with a lot of these leaders, because they probably just were able to use some of these low internet usage tech. I think that's also something that we haven't really touched upon, probably something we'll need another panel to talk about. Being able to access women at ground, talk about their leadership, we started another project called Worth Asking, which is also meant to provide an alternative media narrative for women to be asked questions which are not sexist, which do not bring in the personal characteristics, often gender in nature. And I think Fazra, in the beginning of the talk, you said that it is okay to criticize some politician when they're not doing their job. It's not okay to be personal, and it's not okay to be sexist, and it's not okay to be more gendered and threaten based on a gender identity, and that's what's not okay. That was pretty much the work we were trying to do, which is to use the same platforms to build a narrative, a counter narrative to everything that exists. A few years ago, Sri Lanka had topsy-turvy of the government, and we didn't realize that the person who was being sworn in as their prime minister, we had interviewed her a few years ago, and nobody, well, seeing from outside, we didn't expect that. Probably people inside did expect. Um, that was the only interview that existed for her. So suddenly we wake up and we see like a spike in that article being shared, copy pasted, or like there's a sudden rise, and we were surprised like what happened to all our media channels, like what's happening, and we realized that that was the only narrative that all the other media channels have had, and they were able to. We I think we consider that as a success story that we were able to uh, use or kind of influence that narrative that otherwise would have been influenced by probably negative, biased narratives that may have existed or they may have rapidly shaped up after her being sworn in. So I feel like there is a media as tool does do give access to everyone. Um, Money buys in and business makes the shift, and then political will comes in to um, change the narratives or make it worse. Um, I would stop here. I hope I kind of went into my own pathway of addressing this question. Please do call me out if I did not answer this question.
Thank you so much. So across all four perspectives, we have heard the same underlying principles where digital participation is not essential to political lives, but participation without protections can reproduce exclusion rather than overcome it. The goal is not to ask women or gender diverse leaders to cope with it. Um, or disappear from the social media or digital spaces, but is to build a ecosystem in which visibility does not require sacrificing safety, right? So we are now would like to bring the room into the conversations. So please, if you have any questions, please introduce yourself briefly and then keep your question concise and then let us know whether it's directed to any particular panelist or is to the whole panels. And then we will also wrap up with the reflections from the institutions as well. So if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand and then, yeah, introduce yourself. Any? Yes.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Amna Sardar, Member Provincial Assembly, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Pakistan. I have no question. You briefed us very well. I just want to bring in your notice that in Pakistan, in 2016, we have Cybercrime Act, and the PICA Act is in 2025 has been passed in National Assembly. So we have these two acts, and they're working very good. In fact, I just want to share an example of a member provincial assembly. She went under this act, Cybercrime Act, and the two persons were punished under this act. But she was suffered like this, as she belongs to the opposition party, and the speaker, the ruling party, was opposing her, and she was not allowed to speak in assembly for so many months. So we have these issues. If we go through this process, still we face issues, and that's what. And the other thing, we were talking about messages, like our chairperson of National NCSW, she declared good night messages are a form of harassment. So it's declared by an NCSW. So these are little things, but these are little steps. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Yes.
Yes, so good evening. For those who I haven't met yet, I'm Maya from the Philippines. We co-lead the Bali Inc. I just want to affirm and of course say congratulations and very amazing work and very courageous women in front of us because I believe it's not easy to be in that position. And I want to share a bit of our work, if you will allow me. And we have a survey that we conducted, supported by Comena and the Asia Foundation, both qualitative and quantitative, on the violence against women in politics. I'm not going to share the whole survey. That's going to take us 2 days. But I'm just going to share a bit of affirming some of the things that they mentioned. Um, one is that one of the things that so we use the Mona Lina Crook gender framework, the framework that she used in Violence Against Women in Politics. Around 600 to 800, so we're cleaning the data, but around 600 to 800 has responded. Local legislators, so not national, local legislators. 44% has experienced psychological or emotional harm, physical 12%, sexual 20%, and 33% online digital. 17% economic violence. I want to point out also that 3% happened within the political party and colleagues 8%. So in the provincial council. So during elections and after elections. Perpetrators, political members, 26%, 2%. Donors, 8.77%. And then colleagues, 8%. Of course, a lot is from voters and constituency. But here's another surprising result. 31% said that the perpetrators are women. And 30% male. I want to go to the affirmation also why it's not reported. In that survey, top three, so 50%, 302 out of 638 said they did not report or they did not share their experience. 555 said they don't want to report or they did not. And the reasons, the top three reasons would be one, as Leon was mentioning, people might regard me as too sensitive and emotional. Others cited reasons, lack of trust in people who hold the system, because I wasn't affected that much, so it is seen as normal. It has not significantly changed the political motivation. That's also one good result, if you say good, because a lot who have experienced said that they were more determined to push through with it. And only a little bit of below 10% said that I don't want to run again. So, and then it's part of the political system. And then the third reason is the belief that reporting will not change anything. So, because what we do is building an ecosystem in cities and municipalities for our pilot sites. We do the candidate formation, but we don't want to send the young women in a space that's unsafe for them. So one of the things that we also did was to craft with the Commission on Election and some of the advocates a Violence Against Women in Politics bill, which included TFGBV. One of the bill features is violence against women in politics include women, those candidates and politicians identifying as women. So that's the violence against women in politics. There is a provision on duty of care of digital platform. One of the things, and that's true, our representative Geraldine Roman said that one of the things is that they're not registered in any country, and I think that's a very easy way out for them. And one of the things when we spoke with the Meta representative, who's actually a part of the opposition, but he works with Meta, he said it's a double-edged sword. That's also true, because if the government takes hold of it and the new government who's authoritarian will control it. So that's also encroaching on the freedom of expression. But one of the provisions that we said is that if you're earning money in the Philippines, if you are receiving ads in the Philippines, you have a GPF care. So when someone reports it, you should respond within 24 to 48 hours to take down, to review and take down, and preserve the evidence. Because the Violence Against Women in Politics bill that we're pushing through, which actually was filed in March 23 this year, and what's surprising about it is the main author is an opposition, and Representative Roman would know that if you are an opposition and in the minority, you wouldn't have a lot of support in your bill, right? But this one garnered 54 authorship signatories across political parties, major and minor political parties. So I think it's a good start. And we hope to pass this within this Congress. But even if it does not pass, the Lakasbay Network, John is part of it and leading it, we wanted to have a local ordinance already. Because in the Philippines, our experience is bills are not passed immediately, especially controversial bills, but we are able to pass local ordinances. So we have that program right now in the network that we want to pass local ordinances through our fellows. And we have dialogues with the Department of Education and the Commission on Election on having these measures. So in next month, we're gonna share the results with the political parties. And Commission on Election will sponsor the forums so they can encourage political parties to have a mechanism, safeguard mechanisms for their women members, because it's part of the provision of the bill in case it passes. Just to share also that the Commission on Election, however frustrated we are with them, they have disqualified a congressional candidate in one of the cities because he said that all solo parents should just sleep with him. So it's really bad. Someone filed a disqualification case and he was disqualified. There was a lot of contention about it because is that constitutional, etc., etc. But he did not win the elections, so it's also a good thing. But if he won the election, the COMELEC will not allow him to take the seat until it is resolved in the Supreme Court. So I think that's also one of the gains that we have.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I guess the panelists will be around. So if you guys have any questions, particularly for any panelists, feel free to reach out. So before we end this sessions, I would like to invite one final thoughts from each panelist. Oh, sure.
Namaste everyone. It's a privilege to be here. My name is Amrita BK. I'm beautiful country from Nepal. Thank you for the question. How can young women be encouraged to engage in digital political space? Will you answer?
Women and aspiring public servants will only be encouraged to join the digital space if institutions make it a safe space for them. And for that to happen, each institution must realize its responsibility. Governments have to protect. Law enforcement agencies must act immediately. Political parties must support their candidates. And technology companies must be held accountable for the spaces they operate because they earn money from it. Then, if we do that, we can encourage women to join politics, to be in positions of power, knowing perfectly well that they will be using the digital space without any harm being done on them and their families.
Yes. Yeah.
I think nowadays our young generation of women are already quite participating in especially digital politics. because they are so much serious about their lives. So from the digital sexual harassment to the rights of abortion, they are so much interested in those specific agendas. And when we open the online petitions, they sign up, like thousands of or tens of or hundreds of thousands of people are signing. But I think how can we get them further is our real question. So when they are anonymous, they participate in. But when they have to open their name or their face, they hesitate, they feel fear. I think that's our real challenge, and that's why we are here.
Alright, thank you so much. Alright, so because we're running out of time, as I mentioned earlier, that all the panelists will be here. So if you have any questions, feel free to talk to them. But then I would like to wrap up with one final thought from each panelist. So please keep your response like short. What is one thing that must change now so that women's and gender diverse political leaders no longer have to choose between being visible and being safe? So let's start with Suganda. Yes.
There's so much that needs to change. But if it's one thing that I would really want to change, is the way, is basically having more feminist thoughts within tech. If we don't have them, we don't have representation. If we don't have representation, we are unable to think trade-offs when building tech, when thinking about monetization. What's the ethical responsibility? I think that just doesn't happen if we don't have feminist thoughts.
Alright.
This is a final reflection. Women and gender diverse leaders should never have to choose between visibility and safety. We must stop treating online violence as an occupational hazard that women and gender diverse leaders are expected to endure when they enter politics. This is not normal. The responsibility belongs to institutions, to governments that must protect, to law enforcement agencies that must act, to political parties that must support their candidates, and to technology companies that must be accountable for the spaces they operate. A democracy cannot call itself inclusive when women and gender diverse leaders are free to run for office, but are not safe enough to remain visible, speak freely, and serve.
Thank you so much. Faisra?
If it's only one thing, I think we need to stop treating women's resilience as the solution. Because if we keep talking about you have to be careful on what you say, don't respond to trolls and things like that, that will not change anything. We have to start asking ourselves on how do we make sure that we are building a place where a democracy can support women altogether. And hopefully in the next few years, we don't really have to measure by how resilient the women can be, but how safe can the place be so that young women and the next generation can enter politics with a safe space in mind.
Yes. Thank you. Hang
Yeah, if we can change one thing immediately, I think that will be our behavior, including me. Our attitude dealing with this kind of violence. I am still hesitating to discuss this type of problem with my colleagues or with my families because I am worrying about my family's feeling will be hurt or my colleagues won't feel like me. But we need to change our attitude, address this problem as a problem of our community and show our solidarity to ourselves first and then our colleagues and asking for them not help but solidarity to change our reality. I think that's the one thing that we can immediately here we can change. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So tonight, we are part. Give them a round of applause. Thank you. So course, tonight we have heard like difficult realities, but also practical solutions. And of course, one message has been very clear. Safety cannot remain the responsibility of individual movements alone. It's required actions from political parties, governments, technology companies, civil society, funders, and diplomatic partners. Digital violence may take place through screen, but its consequences extend far beyond them. So affecting participation, representation, and of course, democracy itself. So of course, once again, thank you so much to our panelists for your honesty and expertise, and to everyone in the audience for your thoughtful engagement. So give yourselves a round of applause. All right, so to close our conversation and share how Kumena Fund intends to support this work, it is my pleasure to invite Suyan Barahona, President and CEO of Kumena Fund.
You're lovely. Good evening, everyone. As we end this conversation, I want to begin by expressing my gratitude to all of you, but also to our partners, the British Embassy. Sarah, thank you for your opening remarks, and also for your commitment to advancing also women's political participation. To our moderator, our fabulous moderator, please give her a round of applause. And to our fantastic panel, and to all of you for listening, for your questions, and for being here. I think as we listened here, there are three messages that I'd like to I think that stand out. First, like many of you have said, that TFGBV there is a political strategy behind it, and that there are also particular themes that are that when we want to discuss about rights, the attacks are worsened, and that it is also not about an individual responsibility. That safety is a shared responsibility that many of different actors must play a role, and that we definitely cannot continue to ask women to be just resilient. No. Second, I think that something that's important is that we believe that those who are closest to the problem must also be at the center of the solution. And there's many conversations that often are happening about online safety, and sometimes the voices of the women political leaders who are being affected by those attacks are absent from that. And at Kumena Fund, we believe that the future of democracy depends also on women political leaders having the tools, the support, the power, not only to confront digital violence, but also to really be the architects of safer, more inclusive digital spaces and democracies, and that the solutions should not be designed for them, but with them, and they should be led by them as well. And I think the third thing is that today's conversation reminds us is that while no single institution or actor can solve this challenge, we, here there are many different sectors that have come. We have building blocks for meaningful change. You have different actors here, and we feel like there is an opportunity to connect these communities more intentionally, to strengthen regional collaboration, collective also protection, shared learning, and investment in solutions that are practical, that are innovative, and that are rooted also in lived experience. And that's part of what we aim to do at Kumena Fund. We are a nonpartisan fund that is dedicated to accelerating women's political power across the global majority. And since we launched less than 2 years ago, we've invested nearly $4 million across almost 20 countries and regional initiatives spanning from Africa, Asia, in Latin America. And today I'm also very delighted to announce the next step in that commitment, which is to launch a new portfolio, a 500,000 call on women's political leadership in the digital age, with a particular focus on building safer digital spaces and countering TFDD against women political leaders. This portfolio will support organizations that place the experiences, the knowledge, leadership, and agency of women political leaders at the center of efforts to respond to digital harms and online violence. And we feel that by bringing together the expertise from democracy, from digital rights, from technology, and gender justice, we aim to catalyze innovative, collaborative, and sustainable solutions that are advancing protection and accountability, strengthening collective political leadership, and that are expanding also protection and well-being, and building narratives that enable women political leaders to shape conversations about technology and democracy on their own terms. Above all, we are looking also to support organizations that place women political leaders at the center and that foster collaboration across sectors and strengthen democratic participation. Because this is also not it's not only about making digital spaces safer, it is about ensuring that really women can fully participate, that they can be safe in the political life, and it is also about protecting democracy. So I hope that the dialogue doesn't end here, that I invite all of us to continue also to be connected, the connections you built here, connected to us also in Colmena, and to help us identify bold ideas and transformative partnerships. And so once again, thank you to our fabulous panelists, to you all for being here. Together we can build digital spaces where women don't simply have to survive online, that they can really lead without fear, and where they can shape the future of democracy. So thank you, and that they may inspire that the next generation doesn't have to face the things that we are facing. So thank you so much, and we hope you have a wonderful day. And please, please enjoy the evening, continue the conversations, and once again, thank you.
Before we have a quick networking session, let's have a group photo. Yes, let's have group photos, and then yes.